What's up? Actually, I should probably put this in a live chat message so that everybody can see it. Hi, I'm writing a live chat message right now so that anybody who comes in will know what's going on. So I'm going to be reading the Code of Hammurabi. I don't even know. Did I say that right? I don't even know. I'm going to be reading it aloud so that I don't miss anything and can stay focused. There you go. So, I have kind of already started it, so I'm sorry if you really wanted to hear the beginning, but I don't have the beginning. I don't want to read it again. So I'm going to start. Let's see, where did I not go for? Let's start with adoption. So if you don't know, Code of Hammurabi was a code of laws, one of the most developed and one of the earliest in kind of the Mesopotamia region. So these laws were super complex, bit of an eye for an eye sort of ideals, but I think they're kind of interesting. So I'm going to read through them. Also, I have to because my class is at 3 and I haven't even started this. There's 300 of these different laws. Not 300, nearly 300. And a lot to unpack. So if I read this in my head, I will definitely not focus at all. So I'm going to read it out loud. And I'm sorry for the people that are also studying and I'm just distracting them. So let's go. Adoption was very common, especially where the father or mother was childless or had seen all his children grow up and marry away. The child was then adopted to care for the parent's old age. This was done by contract, usually specified what the parent had to leave and what maintenance was expected. The real children, if any, were usually consenting parties to an arrangement which cut off their expectations. That's interesting that the real kind of it shows that the children had a bit more autonomy from their parents, even more so than modern day. Anyways, okay. Gosh darn it, I told you I'd get distracted. They even, in some cases, found the estate for the adopted child who was to relieve them of a care. If the adopted child failed to carry out the filial duty, the contract was annulled in the law courts. Slaves were often adopted, and if they proved unfilial, were reduced to slavery again. That's a yikes. Imagine getting adopted out of slavery, and then they're like, you're not really the best son, so you're gonna be my slave again. That sucks. Anyways, sorry. Distracted. Stay focused. Goodness gracious. A craftsman often adopted a son to learn the craft. He profited from the son's labor. If he failed to teach his son the craft, that son could prosecute him and get the contract annulled. This is a form of apprenticeship, and it is not clear that the apprentice had any filial relation. Imagine being adopted as a son and you're like, you're not crafty enough. I'm suing you, dad. A man who adopted a son and afterwards married and had a family of his own could dissolve the contract but must give the adopted child 1/3 of the child's share in goods, but no real estate. I probably should be highlighting things. Okay. Let's see. Could dissolve the contract but could give the adopted child 1/3 of the child's share in goods, but no real estate. That could only descend in the family to which he had ceased to belong. Vestals, which are like religious workers of the community, frequently adopted daughters, usually other vestals, to care for their old age. Okay, I did that. Adoption had to be with consent of the real parents, who usually executed a deed making over the child, who thus ceased to have any claim upon them. But vestals, hierodules, certain palace officials, and slaves had no rights over their children and could raise no obstacle. That's interesting. You'd think that the vestals could have rights over their children. Foundlings and illegitimate children had no parents to object. If the adopted child discovered his true parents and wanted to return to them, his eye or tongue was torn out. That's hardcore. I'm gonna highlight that. That's really sad. Anyway, okay. An adopted child was a full heir. Um, so they were on this equal level of a biological child. And the contract might even assign him the position of eldest son. Oh, heck yeah. Usually he was residuary, I don't know what that word is, legatee. All legitimate children shared equally in the father's estate after his death, reservation being made of a bride price for an unmarried son, dower for a daughter, or property deeded to favorite children by the father. There was no birthright attaching to the position of eldest son, but he usually acted as executor and, after considering what each had already received, equalized the shares. He even made grants in excess to the others from his own share. When there were two mothers, the two families shared equally in the father's estate until later times when first family took two-thirds. Daughters, in the absence of sons, had sons' rights. That's tight. Children also shared their own mother's property but had no share in that of the stepmother. Something that I think is interesting about this society is that if the husband dies, the wife would get the property and she would assume the position of the father. And while that's not like the best kind of community, it's much better than even more recent societies that we've seen, like in Pride and Prejudice era England. If your husband died, you got nothing, and you would just basically become homeless. So I think it's interesting that even in this very, very ancient society, they cared about the wives and gave them a place to live. I don't know. The bar is low, but you get what I'm saying. Continuing on, a father could disinherit a son in early times without restriction, but the code insisted upon judicial consent and that only for repeated unfilial conduct. In early times, the son who denied his father had his front hair shorn, a slave mark put on him, and could be sold as a slave, while if he denied his mother, he had his front hair shorn, was driven around the city as an example, and expelled his home, but not degraded to slavery. That's interesting. You'd really want to listen to your parents. Otherwise, you'll get sold into slavery. That's what I mean. If I was a parent in this society, I'd be like, "You better clean up your room, or you're getting sold." That's horrible. That's horrible. Okay. Adultery was punished with the death of both parties by drowning. Interesting. Both parties. You don't see that often. Usually, it's the gal, but in this, if you sleep with somebody else's wife, you're getting guillotined over here too. Sorry, God, I gotta stay focused. Okay. But if the husband was willing to pardon his wife, the king might intervene to pardon the paramour. That's nice. For incest with his own mother, both were burned to death. With a stepmother, the man was disinherited. With a daughter, the man was exiled. With a daughter-in-law, he was drowned. With a son's betrothed, he was fined. Interesting that they have different, specific punishments for each. Like one of them is burning, one of them is disinherited, one is exiled. I wonder what made them choose those punishments specifically. They're like, oh yeah, if it was with his mother, drowning's not good. I don't know, it's weird. If with a son's betrothed, he was fined. A wife who, for her lover's sake, procured her husband's death was gibbeted. I don't know what that word means, but it sounds fun. A betrothed girl, seduced by her prospective father-in-law, took her dowry and returned to her family and was free to marry as she chose. In the criminal law, the ruling principle was lex talionis, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, limb for limb, and the penalty for assault upon an emelut. A sort of symbolic retaliation was the punishment of the offending member, seen in the cutting off of the hand that struck a father or stole a trust, a cutting off the breast of a wet nurse who substituted a changeling for the child entrusted to her, in the loss of the tongue that denied father or mother. In the Elamite contracts, the same penalty was inflicted for perjury. In the loss of an eye that pried into forbidden secrets. Oh. Dude, if you're too nosy, you lose your eye. This is so hardcore. Oh my gosh. The loss of the surgeon's hand that caused the loss of life, or limb of the brander's hand that obliterated a slave's identification mark, are very similar. The slave who struck a freeman or denied his master lost an ear, the organ of hearing, and the symbol of obedience. To bring another into danger of death by false accusation was punished by death. To cause loss of liberty or property by false witness was punished by the penalty the perjurer sought to bring upon another. This is really, really hardcore. The punishments are super, like, straightforward. But I think it makes sense a little bit because if you don't have a prison system, you don't have any sort of, like, Eighth Amendment, then of course you're gonna have more like nip it in the bud sort of punishments. Though I think the loss of the surgeon's hand that caused the loss of life or limb is kind of interesting. I don't think I would want to be a doctor or a surgeon in this society if it meant that any mistake be could be inflicted upon me as well. The death penalty was freely awarded for theft and other crimes regarding as coming under that head, for theft involving entrance of palace or temporary treasury, for illegal purchase from minor or slave, for selling stolen goods or receiving the same, for common theft in open in default of multiple restoration, or receiving the same, for false claim to goods, for kidnapping, for assisting or harboring fugitive slaves. This is a run-on sentence. Goodness gracious. For detaining or appropriating same, for brigandage, for fraudulent sale of drink, for disorderly conduct of tavern, for delegation of personal service, for misappropriating the levy, for oppression of feudal holders, for causing death of a householder by bad building. That's the end. The death penalty is for all of that. Big yikes. If your tavern is unruly, you're getting the guillotine. The manner of death is not specified in these cases. This death penalty was also fixed for such conduct as placed another in a danger of death. A specific form of death penalty occurs in the following cases: gibbeting on the spot where the crime was committed, for burglary, later also for encroaching on the king's highway, for getting a slave branded obliterated, for procuring a husband's death, burning for incest with his own mother, for vestal entering or opening a tavern. Oh yeah, that's something that's interesting, is that if you're like an equivalent of a nun in the society, you can't go into any tavern or you will die. For theft at fire on spot, drowning for adultery, rape of a betrothed maiden, bigamy, bad conduct as wife, seduction of a daughter-in-law. Don't do any of those things, guys. Especially not in... I forgot where this is from. But, okay. A curious extension of the talio is the death of a creditor's son for fathers having caused the death of a debtor's son as emancipium. I swear this video is going to get brought up later in my career, and they're just going to make a montage of all the words that I mispronounced, and then they're going to say, see, look, she's unfit for her career. She can't even pronounce emancipium. Okay. Of builder's son for his father's causing the death of the house owner's son by building the house badly. The death of a man's daughter because her father caused the death of another man's daughter. I think that's interesting too. They say, like, if you build a house poorly and it kills somebody, like, you will die. Because you indirectly caused that death. They really don't pull the punches. They go straight for the jugular. The contracts naturally do not concern such criminal cases as above, as a rule, but marriage contracts do specify death by strangling, drowning, precipitation from a tower or pinnacle of the temple, or by the iron sword of the wife's repudiation of her husband. We are quite without evidence as to the executive in all these cases. There's so many punishments that are like public. I wonder if you lived in this society, would you just constantly be witnessing capital punishment everywhere you went? Like, you went to go bathe in a river and like 5 people are being drowned for adultery. There's so much. Like, goodness gracious. Exile was inflicted for incest with a daughter, disinheritance for incest with a stepmother, or repeated unfilial conduct. 60 strokes of an oxhide scourge were awarded for a brutal assault on a superior, both being emalu. Branding, perhaps the equivalent of degradation to slavery, was the penalty for slander of a married woman or vestal. Deprivation of office in perpetuity fell upon the corrupt judge. Enslavement befell the extravagant wife and unfilial children. Imprisonment was common, but is not recognized by the code. That's something that I mentioned, is that they probably don't have a very stable imprisonment system. Okay. The commonest of all penalties was a fine, just like my college. This is awarded by the Code for Corporeal Injuries to a muskinu or slave paid to his master for damages done to property for breach of contract. The restoration of goods appropriated, illegally bought, or damaged by neglect was usually accompanied by a fine, giving it the form of multiple restoration. This might be double, treble, fourfold, fivefold, sixfold, tenfold, twelvefold, even 30fold, according to a enormity of defense. Am I going to get copyrighted for reading this entire thing? Do you think that the Code of Hammurabi is under copyright protection? Let me know. Okay. The code recognized the importance of intention. A man who killed, I should highlight that. A man who killed another in a quarrel must swear he did not do so intentionally. That's cool. Motive is in there. And was then only fined according to the rank of the deceased. The code does not say what would be the penalty of murder, but death is so often awarded where death is caused that we can hardly doubt that the murderer was put to death. If the assault only led to injury and was unintentional, the assailant in the quarrel had to pay the doctor's fees. A brander induced to remove a slave identification mark could swear his ignorance and was free. The owner of an ox which was gored on a man on the street was only responsible for damages if the ox was known by him to be vicious, even if it caused death. If the mancipium died a natural death under the creditor's hand, the creditor was scot-free. Died a natural death, okay. In ordinary cases, responsibility was not demanded for accident or for more than proper care. Poverty excused bigamy on the part of a deserted wife. Interesting. They take rank and motive into account. That's nice. Okay, moving on. On the other hand, carelessness and neglect were severely punished. Amen. As in the case of an unskillful physician, if it led to the loss of life or limb, his hands were cut off. A slave had to be replaced. The loss of his eye paid for half of its value. A veterinarian surgeon who caused the death of an ox or donkey paid quarter value. A builder whose careless workmanship caused death lost his life or paid for it by the death of his child. Replaced slaves or good, and in any case had to rebuild the house or make good any damages due to defective building and repair the defect as well. The boat builder had to make good any defect of construction or damage due to it for a year's warranty. That's interesting. Your boats are always warranted for a year. So get into that boat building season. Throughout the code, respect is paid to status. Suspicion was not enough. The criminal must be taken in the act. Example, the adulterer, ravisher. A man could not be convicted of theft unless the goods were found in his possession. That's probably important. And then that also kind of relates to the part where if you accused somebody of something and you didn't have any evidence, you would just be straight up put to death. So you really do have to catch them in the act before you say anything. Okay. In the case of a lawsuit, the plaintiff preferred his own plea. There is no trace of professional advocates, but the plea had to be in writing, and the notary doubtless assisted in the drafting of it. The judge saw the plea, called the other parties before him, and sent for witnesses. If these were not at hand, he might adjourn the case for the production, specifying a time up to 6 months. Guarantees might be entered into to produce the witnesses on a fixed day. The more important cases, especially those involving life and death, were tried by a bench of judges. I like how they have a whole judicial system. That's nice. With the judges were associated a body of elders who shared in the decision, but whose exact function is not yet clear. Agreements, declarations, and non-contentious cases were usually witnessed by one judge and 12 elders. Next page. I hope you know that I have a lot of these pages. I'm glad somebody's here to listen, but I would not watch this video. Okay. So parties and witnesses were put on oath. The penalty, that's really important. What did they oath on? Did they oath on their own Bible, or did they oath on just their lives? Their mother's graves? What did they do? How did they pray? I mean, oh. The penalty for the false witness was usually that which would have been awarded to the convicted criminal. In matters beyond the knowledge of men, as the guilt or innocence of an alleged wizard or suspected wife. Oh, they do like wizards. Interesting. The ordeal by water was used. The accused jumped into the sacred river, and the innocent swam while the guilty drowned. That was something that was kind of interesting, reminded me of the Salem witch trials, is that oftentimes you would be thrown into a sacred river, and if you survived, you were considered innocent up to like the divine right, yes. But if you drowned, then you were not innocent. Thing is that nobody knew how to swim. So I think if you wanted to be a criminal in this society, you better get some swimming lessons or at least some floaties, because otherwise you're done for. The accused could clear himself by oath where his own knowledge was alone available. The plaintiff could swear to his loss by brigands as to goods claimed, the price paid for a slave purchased abroad, or the sum due to him. But great stress was laid on the production of written evidence. It was a serious thing to lose a document. The judges might be satisfied of its existence and the terms by the evidence to the witnesses to it, and then issue an order that whenever found it should be given up. Contracts annulled were ordered to be broken. The court might go a journey to view the property and even take with them the sacred symbols on which the oath was made. Oh, sacred symbols. That's what I was asking. I don't know what the sacred symbols means, but they're sacred symbols. Okay. The decision was embodied in writing, sealed and witnessed by the judges, the elders, witnesses, and a scribe. Women might act in all these capacities. Tight. We love women acting in these capacities. The parties swore an oath embodied in the document to observe its stipulations. Each took a copy, and one was held by the scribe to be stored in the archives. Appeal to the king was allowed and is well attested. The judges at Babylon seem to have formed a superior court to those of provincial towns, but a defendant might elect to answer the charge before the local court and refuse to plead at Babylon. So there's different places you can go to talk about your courts and talk about crimes. I'm so sorry. Okay. Finally, it may be noted that many immoral acts, such as the use of false weights, lying, etc., which could not be brought into court, are severely denounced in the Omen tablets, as likely to bring the offender into the hand of God as opposed to the hand of the king. So if you straight up are messing with the courts, you're gonna have to answer to God for that, sir. They're not even gonna try you with the king, and I believe that means that you're gonna be thrown into the river. Okay. So that was mostly the introduction. But it seemed like a lot of laws to me, so I think we've got even more to go. So, should I do this in ASMR? Maybe more people would like that. I'm not gonna do that for this video. I'm just gonna keep reading. Okay. When Anu, the sublime king of Anunnaki, and Bel, the lord of heaven and earth, who decreed the fate of the land, assigned Marduk, the overruling son of Ea, god of righteousness, dominion over earthly man, and made him great among Igigi. They called Babylon by its illustrious name, made it great on earth, and founded an everlasting kingdom in it, whose foundations are laid so solidly as those of heaven and earth. Then Anu and Bel called by name me, Hammurabi, the exalted prince who feared God, to bring about the rule and righteousness of the land, to destroy the wicked and the evildoers, so that the strong should not harm the weak. Semicolon. So I should rule over the black-headed people like Shamash and enlighten the land to further the well-being of mankind. Good on you, Hammurabi. Hammurabi. I'm not going to call him by anything else but that. Hammurabi, the prince, called of Bel am I, making riches and increase, enriching Nippur and Dur-Ilu beyond compare, sublime patron of Ekur, who re-established Eridu and purified the worship of E-Apsu, who conquered the four quarters of the world, made great the name of Babylon, rejoiced the heart of Marduk, his lord who daily pays his devotions on Sagil, the royal scion whom sin made, who enriched the humble, the reverent, who brings wealth to Gishurgal, the white king, heard of Shamash, the mighty who again laid the foundations of Sippara, who clothed the gravestones of Malkat with green, who made Ibabar great, which is like the heavens. The warrior who guarded Larsa and renewed Ibarbar, with Shamash as his helper. The Lord who granted new life to Uruk, who brought plenteous water to its inhabitants, raised the head of Iana, and perfected the beauty of Anu and Nana, shield of the land, who renewed the scattered inhabitants of Ison, who richly endowed Igalmak, the protecting king of the city, brother of the Lord of the god Zamama, who firmly founded the farms of Kish, crowned Imeti Ursag with glory, redoubled the great holy treasures of Nana, managed the temple of Harsag Kalama, the grave of the enemy, whose help brought about the victory, who increased the power of Kutha, made all glorious in Ishidlam, the black steer, who gored the enemy beloved of the god Nebo, who rejoiced in the inhabitants of Borsippa, the sublime, who indefatigable for Izida, divine king of the city, the white, the wise, who broadened the fields of Dilbat, who heaped on the harvest of Urshash, the mighty, the Lord whom I'm gonna skip. Do you mind if I skip? This is like one sentence. I'm gonna skip it all because it seems like he's just tooting his horn and I'm kind of done. I mean, it says irresistible warrior and sure, hammurabi, that's what you are. Irresistible warrior. Okay, basically the rest of it is just him saying how good he is. And we're gonna say hammurabi is pretty good. And move on. So now we can get started in the code of laws. Okay, when Marduk sent me to rule over men to give the protection of right to the land, I did right and righteousness in ... and brought about the well-being of the oppressed. Thank you so much, Hammurabi. So let's start. Number one, we've got, if anyone ensnare another, putting a ban upon him, but he cannot prove it, then he that ensnared him shall be put to death. Number two, if anyone bring an accusation against a man, and the accused go to the river and leap into the river, if he sink in the river, his accuser shall take possession of his house. But if the river prove that the accused is not guilty, and he escape unhurt, then he who had brought the accusation shall be put to death, while who leaped into the river shall take possession of the house that belonged to the accuser. So basically, if you know how to swim, you get free real estate. That's what I hear from this. Number three, if anyone bring an accusation of any crime before the elders, and does not prove what he has charged, he shall, if the capital offense charged, be put to death. A lot of this is saying, if you wrongly accused, you're gonna have some serious consequences, buddy boy. That's what Hammurabi says. Number four, if he satisfies the elders to impose a fine of grain or money, he shall receive the fine that the action produces. If he satisfies the elders to impose a fine of grain or money. I don't know what that means. Number five, if a judge try a case, reach a decision, and present his judgment in writing, if later error shall appear in his decision, and it be through his own fault, then he shall pay 12 times the fine set by him in the case, and he shall be publicly removed from the judge bench, and never again shall he sit there to render judgment. So if you are not a great judge, you lose your job, and then you have to pay 12 times the fine. That means be careful with your job. Number six, if anyone steal the property of a temple or of the court, he shall be put to death, and also the one who receives the stolen thing from him shall be put to death. Number seven, if anyone buy from the son or the slave of another man, without witnesses or a contract, silver or gold, a male or female slave, an ox or a sheep, a donkey or anything, or if he take it in charge, he is considered a thief and will be put to death. As you do. Anyone buy from the son or the slave of another man. So you need, every single time you buy something, you need a witness or contract. That seems kind of excessive, but I guess it's fine. Number 8, if anyone steal cattle or sheep, or a donkey, a pig, or a goat, if it belong to a god or to the court, the thief shall pay 30-fold therefor. If they belong to a freedman of the king, he shall pay 10-fold. If the thief has nothing with which to pay, he shall be put to death. If you're poor, you will die. Just letting you know. Number 9, if anyone lose an article and find it in the possession of another, if the person in whose possession the thing is found to say, a merchant sold it to me, I paid for it before witnesses, and if the owner of the thing say, I will bring witnesses to know my property, then shall the purchaser bring the merchant who sold it to him, and the witness before whom he bought it, and the owner shall bring witnesses who can identify his property. The judge shall examine their testimony, both of the witnesses before whom the price was paid, and the witnesses who identify the lost article on oath. The merchant is then to proved to be a thief and shall be put to death. The owner of the lost article receives his property, and he who bought it receives the money and he paid from the estate on the merchant. I'm going to highlight the amount of witnesses that they need. Both witnesses. Okay. Next. Number 10. If the purchaser does not bring the merchant and the witnesses before whom he brought the article, but its owner brings witnesses to identify it, then the buyer is the thief and shall be put to death, and the owner receives the lost article. What if you can't find the merchant who sold it to you? I mean, merchants go all over the place. He's probably in like Egypt right now, and you have to call him over unless you get put to death. That's unfortunate. Anyways, number 11. If the owner do not bring witnesses to identify the lost article, he is an evildoer. He is traduced and shall be put to death. Nice going. Okay. If the witnesses be not at hand, then the judge shall set a limit at the expiration of 6 months. If his witnesses have not appeared within the 6 months, he is an evildoer and shall bear the fine of a pending case. Editor's note: there is no 13th law in the code, 13 being considered an unlucky and evil number. Interesting. Hammurabi does not like the number 13. If you are 13 years old, you get put to death. Okay, sorry. Hi, new person. I'm reading the Code of Hammurabi, so Hammurabi. So I hope you enjoy. I'm on number 12. Actually, no, I'm on number 14 now because there's no 13. So, if anyone steal the minor son of another, he shall be put to death. Number 15. If anyone take a male or female slave of the court, or a male or female slave of a freedman outside the city gates, he shall be put to death. If anyone receive into his house a runaway male or female slave of the court or of the freeman, and does not bring it out at the public proclamation of the major domus, I don't know what that means, the master of the house shall be put to death. Please take a shot every single time I say put to death, because you will be put to death. Okay, sorry. Number 17. I skipped. Okay. If anyone find runaway male or female slaves in the open country and bring them to their masters, the master of the slaves shall pay him 2 shekels of silver. If the slave 18. If the slave will not give the name of the master, the finder shall bring him to the palace. A further investigation must follow, and the slave shall be returned to his master. I feel like, I don't know, if I found like somebody run away, it's not my business to return them. Then again, I would never condone slavery in the first place, but I guess. 19. If he holds the slaves in his house and they are caught there, he shall be put to death. Rip. 20. If the slave that he caught run away from him, then shall he swear to the owners of the slave, and he is free of blame. Okay. 21. If anyone break a hole into a house, break in to steal, he shall be put to death before that hole and be buried. You're put to death at the place that you break in. So if you break in a window, you're getting killed at that window. Anyways, that's just an interesting specific fact. 22. If anyone is committing a robbery and is caught, then he shall be put to death. 23. Welcome, new person. 23. If the robber is not caught, then shall he who was robbed claim under oath the amount of his loss. Then shall the community and ... on whose grounds the territory and in whose domain it was compensate him for his goods stolen. So you got insurance from your community. That's tight. Robber not caught. Community compensate. I love good community. Anyways, okay. 24. If persons are stolen, then shall the community pay 1 mina of silver to their relatives. That's cool. 25. If fire breaks out in a house and someone who comes to put it out cast his eye upon the property of the owner of the house and take the property of the master of the house, he shall be thrown into that self-same fire. Yikes. Okay, continuing. 26. If a chieftain or a man, common soldier, who has been ordered to go upon the king's highway for war does not go, but hires a mercenary, if he withholds the compensation, then shall his officer or man be put to death, and he who represented him shall take possession of his house. Dude, you're gonna lose your house and your life. Okay. If a chieftain or man be caught in the misfortune of the king, captured in battle, and if his fields and garden be given to another, and he take possession, if he return and reaches his place, his field and garden shall be returned to him, and he shall take it over again. That's pretty standard. If a chieftain or man be caught in the misfortune of a king, if his son is able to enter into possession, then the field and the garden shall be given to him. He shall take over the fee of his father. 29. If his son is still young and cannot take possession, a third of the field and garden shall be given to his mother, and she shall bring him up. It's interesting. A third is given to his mother, but in other cases, the mother would just inherit the whole thing if he was dead. But if he's captured, she only gets a third. I think the wife would want them to finish off the deal. 30. If a chieftain or man leave his house, garden, or field and hires it out, and someone else takes possession of his house, garden, and field and uses it for three years, if the first owner returns and claims his house, garden, and field, it shall not be given to him, but he who has taken possession of it and used it shall continue to use it. If he hire it out for 1 year and then return, the house, garden, and field shall be given back to him, and he shall take it over again. If a chieftain or man is captured on the way in war, and the merchant buy him free and bring him back to his place, if he have the means in his house to buy his freedom, he shall buy himself free. If he have nothing in his house with which to buy himself free, he shall be bought free by the temple of his community. If there is nothing in the temple with which to buy him free, the court shall buy his freedom. His field, guard, and house shall be all. What's up? Why are you always scared? This is my room.
Because you're always so beautiful. You're beautiful scares me.
Okay. I'm reading this. That is the baddest peach I've ever seen.
Yeah. Did you receive my message?
I haven't checked my phone.
I really curious about your response.
Let me see.
You're really cute.
Oh my gosh. That is the cutest thing I've ever seen. I love it.
You love cat.
Of course I love cats. My roommate just sent me 9 pictures of cats. I love that. Thank you.
I just sent you pictures.
谢谢.
You're welcome.
And you can see all these pictures of cats. Okay.
人生好难呀.
So I have to read how many do I have? I have to read 252 laws.
Pages?
No, just laws.
Oh my gosh.
And
you need to recite or just need to read?
Recite.
Oh my gosh!
So yeah, I'm reading them out loud.
Oh my gosh. Really?
Why does it look like that? I know. But I'm reading them out loud so that I don't lose focus because I will skim over it otherwise.
Oh, you can do it because you're really hardworking. You are this too.
加油.
Yeah, 加油.
Okay. going for you that are enthralled with the code of Hammurabi. Okay, 33. If a or a enter ... I believe means that they don't know the translation. So if a blank or a blank enter himself as withdrawn from the war.
Just make a friend who come from California too.
California?
Yeah, his name's Teddy.
I should meet him.
Yes, that's what he told me.
Cool.
He also told me maybe I know Sophia, maybe.
Maybe. I don't think I recognize his name, but I'd love to befriend him.
Yeah, I know you're from Sacramento, California.
What did he say he's from?
What?
What area did he say he's from?
I just know he's from California.
Oh.
Do you know how can I know your hometown? Because I know your hometown from the church fair. Sacramento, California. We're from Sacramento, California.
I know. Well, because California is a big state. So they always they want to know which part.
Yeah.
And then they always assume that I'm from LA, but I'm not from LA.
Yeah. I just know a few states of America. California, Texas, Massachusetts, and Washington D.C.
Oh, that's cool.
Ohio, no, I just know.
Okay. I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah. You have good work.
你有功课吗？
A lot of homework.
很多功课。
A lot of homework.
Wow. Okay.
A lot. I want to die.
Gosh, I have to be done by 2:30. I only have 1 more hour left, and I have to read all
Do
this.
you know I have a quiz on Friday?
你有考试
Oh
吗？
yeah.
为什么？
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
什么课
Microeconomics.
？Microeconomics 的考试
Yeah.
很难。
Yeah.
为什么？
Sorry, oh my god, I'm
Oh my
so
gosh.
tired of reading Code of Hammurabi. Okay, I'll keep going.
The cowboy is busy.
Cowboy.
Cowboy is busy.
牛仔裤很忙. What does that mean?
I don't know.
Okay,
It is freestyle improvisation.
you should be a singer. Okay.
Improvisational means 即兴，
即兴.
没有准备 not prepared, just improvisation.
I like it. I'm gonna use that word.
即兴的 follow me 即兴
Okay. If you want to listen on these laws too, you can listen because I'll just be saying them out loud. Okay. 33. If a blank or a blank enter himself as withdrawn from the war and send a mercenary as a substitute, but withdraw him, then the blank or blank shall be put to death. 34. If a blank or a blank harm the property of a captain, injure the captain, or take away from the captain a gift presented to him by the king, then the blank or blank should be put to death. Dude, ahoy mateys, don't hurt your captain. 35. If anyone buy the cattle or sheep which the king has given to a chieftain from him, he loses his money. 36. The field, garden, and house of a chieftain, of a man, or of one subject to quit rent cannot be sold. 37. If anyone buy the field, garden, or house of the chieftain, man, or one subject to a quit rent. I don't know what quit rent is. His contract tablet of sale shall be broken, declared invalid, and he loses his money. The field, garden, and house returns to owners. Something that I think is really interesting is that when you make contracts, you put them on tablets. And so when you want to break a contract, you don't just like do some boring signing. You take that tablet and you break it in half. Like, I don't know, I think that's cool. Anyways, I'll keep going. So, okay. Let's see, 39. He may, however, assign a field, garden, or house which he has bought and holds as property to his wife or daughter or give it for debt. 40. He may sell field, garden, and house to a merchant, royal agents, or to other public official, the buyer holding field, house, and garden for its usufruct. I don't know what that word means. 41. If anyone fence in the field, garden, or house of a chieftain, man, or subject to quit rent, furnishing the palings therefore, if the chieftain, man, or one subject to quit rent return the field, garden, and house, the palings which were given to him become his property. Tight. Keep going. 42. If anyone take over a failed to till it and obtained no harvest therefrom, it must be proved that he did not work on the field. He did no work on the field, and he must deliver again, just as the neighbor raised the owner's field. 43, if he do not till the field, but let it lie fallow, he shall give grain like his neighbors to the owner of the field, and the field which he let lie fallow must plow and sow and return to its owner. 44. If anyone take over a waste-lying field to make it arable, but is lazy and does not make it arable, he shall plow the fallow field in the 4th year, harrow it and till it, and give it back to its owner, and for each 10 gan, a measure of the area, 10 gur of grain shall be paid. So they really don't want you to be lazy, which is nice. 45. If a man rent his field for tillage for a fixed rental and receive the rent for his field, but bad weather come and destroy the harvest, the injury falls upon the tiller of the soil. That sucks. Bad weather and it's your fault. Big rip. 46. If he did not receive a fixed rental for his field, but lets on half or third shares of the harvest, the grain of the field shall be divided proportionally between the tiller and the owner. 47. If the tiller, because he did not succeed in the 1st year, has had the soil tilled by others, the owner may raise no objection. The field has been cultivated and he receives the harvest according to the agreement. Hi, there's 3 people. Why are you here? 48. If anyone owe a debt for a loan and the storm prostrates the grain, or the harvest fail and the grain does not grow back for lack of water, in that year he need not give the creditor any grain. He washes his debt tablet in water and pays no rent for this year. That sucks. 50. If he give a cultivated cornfield or a cultivated sesame field, the corn or sesame in the field shall belong to the owner of the field, and he shall return the money to the merchant as rent. I'm not really absorbing these, I'm just going through them now. 51. If he has no money to repay, then he shall pay in corn or sesame in place of money as rent for what he received from the merchant according to the royal tariff. 52. If the cultivator do not plant corn or sesame in the field, the debtor's contract is not weakened. 53. If anyone be too lazy to keep his dam in proper condition, and he does not so keep it, if then the dam break and all the fields be flooded, then shall he whose dam break occurred be sold for money, and the money shall replace the corn which he has caused to be ruined. If he be not able to replace the corn, then he and his possessions shall be divided among the possessions of the owner's corn. Okay. 55. If anyone open his ditches to water his crops, but is careless, and the water flood the field of his neighbor, then he shall pay his neighbor for the corn of his losses. That makes sense. If a man let in the water, and the water overflow the plantation of his neighbor, he shall pay 10 gur of corn for every 10 gan of land. 57. If a shepherd, without the permission of the owner of the field, and without the knowledge of the owner of the sheep, lets the sheep into the field to graze, and then the owner of the field shall harvest his crop, and the shepherd, who had pastured his flock there without permission of the owner of the field, shall pay to the owner 20 gur of corn for every 10 gan. 58. If after the flocks have left the pasture and been shut up in the common fold at the city gate, any shepherd let into the field, and they graze there, the shepherd shall take possession of the field, which he is allowed to be grazed on, and at the harvest he must pay 60 gur of corn for every 10 gan. So these are all the farming regulations, which is kind of important in this day and age. 58. If after the flocks have left the pasture and been shut up in the common fold of the city gate, I think I already read that. Okay, moving on. 59. If any man without the knowledge of the owner of the garden fell a tree in a garden, he shall pay half a mina in money. 60. If anyone give over a field to a gardener for him to plant it as a garden, if he work at it and care for it for 4 years, in the 5th year the owner of the garden shall divide it, the owner taking his part in charge. Next. 61. If the gardener has not completed the planting of the field, leaving one part unused, this shall be assigned to him as his. 62. If he do not plant the field that was given over to him as a garden, if it be arable land for corn or sesame, the gardener owner shall pay the owner the produce of the field for the years that he let it lie fallow, according to the product of neighboring fields, put the field in the arable condition and return it to the owner. 63. If he transform wasteland into arable fields and return it to the owner, the latter shall pay him for 1 year 10 gur for 10 get. If he transform wasteland into aerial fields and return it to its owner, the latter shall pay him for 1 year 10 gur for 10 get. If anyone hand over his garden to a gardener to work, the gardener shall pay to its owner 2/3 of the produce of the garden, for so long as he has it in possession, and the other third he shall he keep. So the worker gets 1/3 of the produce of the garden. That's cool. Okay. If a gardener does not work in the garden and the product fall off, the gardener shall pay in proportion to the other neighboring gardens. Here, a proportion of the text of the mission apparently comprising 34 paragraphs. 34 paragraphs are missing from this. Okay. What? Oh, so this skips right over to 100. Oh my gosh, that means that I don't have to read as much. Thank God. Okay. 100. Interest for the money, as much as he has received, he shall give a note therefor, and on the day when they settle, pay to the merchant. 101. If there are no mercantile arrangements in the place whither he went, he shall leave the entire amount of money which he received with the broker to give to the merchant. 102. If a merchant entrust money to an agent broker for some investment, and the broker suffer a loss in the place to which he goes, he shall make a good capital to the merchant. 103. If while on the journey an enemy take away from him anything that he had, the broker shall swear by God and be free of obligation. Interesting. 104. If a merchant give an agent of corn, wool, oil, or any other goods to transport, the agent shall give a receipt for the amount and compensate the merchant therefor. Then he shall obtain a receipt form. I'm going to say that's from the merchant for the money that he gives the merchant. 105. If the agent is careless and does not take a receipt for the money for which he gave the merchant, he cannot consider the unreceived money as his own. So if you don't have a receipt for anything, you're automatically considered that you stole it. And to the person that just joined, if you steal, you're dead, like hardcore dead. Okay, 106. If the agent accept money from the merchant, but have a quarrel with the merchant, denying the receipt, then shall the merchant swear before God and witnesses that he has given this money to the agent, and the agent shall pay him 3 times the sum. 107. If the merchant cheat the agent in that, as the latter has returned to him all that has been given to him, but the merchant denies the receipt of which had been returned to him, then shall this agent convict the merchant before God and judges, and if he still deny receiving what the agent had given him, shall pay 6 times the sum of the agent. What time is it? I don't have that much time. Okay, we can keep going. 108. If a tavern keeper does not accept corn according to the gross weight in payment of the drink, but takes money, and the price of the drink is less that of the corn, she shall be convicted and thrown into the water. I don't get that, but okay. If conspirators meet in the house of the tavern keeper, and these conspirators are not captured and delivered to the court, the tavern keeper shall be put to death. What the heck does a tavern keeper have to do with that? If a sister of a god open a tavern and enter a tavern to drink, then shall this woman be burned to death. Oh, I think that's like a vestal. If an innkeeper furnish 60 ka of usakani drink to ... she shall receive 50 ka of corn at the harvest. 112. If anyone be on a journey and entrust silver, gold, precious stones, or any other movable property to another, and wish to recover from him, if the latter do not bring all of the property to the appointed place, but appropriate it to its own use, then shall this man who did not bring the property to hand it over be convicted, and he shall pay 5-fold for all that he has been entrusted to him. 113. If anyone have consignment of corn or money, and he take from the granary a box without the knowledge of the owner, then shall he who took corn without the knowledge of the owner out. Yes. granary out of the box, be legally convicted, and repay the corn he has taken, and he shall lose whatever commission was paid to him or due him. 114. If a man have no claim on another for corn and money, and try to demand it by force, he shall pay 1/3 of mina in the silver in every case. 115. If anyone have a claim for corn or money upon another, and imprison him, if the prisoner die in prison a natural death, then the case shall go no further. So if he died, you're done. Which makes sense. 116. If the prisoner die in prison from blows or maltreatment, the master of the prisoner shall judge. If he was a freeborn man, the son of the merchant shall be put to death. If it was a slave, he shall pay 1/3 of the mina of gold, and all that the master of the prisoner gave he shall forfeit. Prisoner died in prison from blows or maltreatment. What does the merchant have anything to do with it? I don't get that. Whatever. Moving on. We've got a lot to go through. Okay. If anyone failed to meet a claim for debt and sell himself, his wife, his son, and daughter for money, or give them away to forced labor, they shall work for 3 years in the house of the man who bought them, or the proprietor, and in the 4th year they shall be set free. That's tight. If he give a male or female slave away for forced labor, and the merchant sublease them or sell them for money, no objection can be raised. 119. Oh, I'm so hungry. 119. If anyone failed to meet a claim or debt, and he sell the maidservant who bore him children for money, the money which the merchant has paid shall be repaid to him by the owner of the slave, and she shall be freed. 120. If anyone store corn for safekeeping in another person's house, and any harm happen to the corn in storage, or if the owner of the house open the granary and take some of the corn, or if especially he deny that the corn was stored in his house, then the owner of the corn shall claim his corn before God on oath, and the owner of the house shall pay its owner for the corn, all the corn that he took. Okay, moving on. 121. If anyone store corn in another man's house, he shall pay him storage at a rate of 1 gur for every 5 cod corn per year. We got storage prices in the code of hammurabi. Okay, moving on. 122. If anyone give another silver, gold, or anything else to keep, he shall show everything to some witness, draw up a contract, and then hand it over to safekeeping. If he turn it over to safekeeping without witness or contract, and if he to whom it was given deny it, then he shall have no legitimate claim. 124. If anyone delivers silver, gold, if anyone delivers silver, gold, or anything else to another for safekeeping before a witness, but he deny it, he shall be brought before a judge, and all that he has denied shall be paid back in full. 125. If anyone place his property with another for safekeeping, and there either through thieves or robbers his property and the property of the other man be lost, the owner of the house, through whose neglect the loss took place, shall compensate the owner for all that was given to him in charge, but the owner of the house shall try to follow up and recover his property and take it away from the thief. 126. 126. If anyone who has not lost his goods state that they have been lost and make false claims, if he claim his goods and the amount of injury before God, even though he has not lost them, he shall be fully compensated for all his loss claimed. Oh, so in other words, all you gotta do is swear that you lost something, and then you'll get paid for it. Not that I condone lying or anything, but that seems a little bit like that. 127. If anyone point the finger, aka slander, at a sister of a god or wife of anyone and cannot prove it, this man shall be taken before the judges and brow shall be marked. 128. If a man take a woman to wife but have no intercourse with her, this woman is no wife to him. That's funny. That's weird. That's funny. Okay. 129. If a man's wife be surprised with another man, both shall be tied and thrown into the water, but the husband may pardon the wife and the king of his slaves. I think we already read that. 130. If a man violate his wife, betrothed or child wife of another man, who has never known a man and still lives in her father's house, and sleep with her and be surprised, this man shall be put to death, but the wife is blameless. I like that the wife is blameless. Okay, next. We've got several pages left. Okay, 131. If a man bring charge against one's wife, but she is not surprised with another man. I think surprised doesn't mean surprised if you catch my drift. But she is not surprised with another man. She must take an oath and then return to her house. Okay. If slander at a man's wife about another man, but she is not caught sleeping with the other man, she shall jump into the river for her husband. Wow, that's hardcore. That's some loyalty, I guess. If anyone be captured in war and there is not sustenance in his house, if his wife go to another house, this woman shall be held blameless. 135. If a man be taken prisoner in war and there is no sustenance in his house, and his wife go to another house and bear children, and if later her husband return and come to his home, then the wife shall return to her husband, but the children follow their father. 136. 136. If anyone leaves his house, run away, and then his wife go to another house, if then he return and wishes to take his wife back, because he fled from his home and ran away, the wife of the runaway shall not return to the husband. That's cool. 137. If a man wish to separate from a woman who has borne him children, or from his wife who has borne him children, then he shall give that wife her dowry.
Sophia,
Mm-hmm.
did you get this email?
Probably.
Have you ever dreamed of studying abroad in Italy?
Of course, but I don't have money. 我没有钱.
I don't have money and I don't have language.
You can't speak 意大利语吗?
No, I just can't speak Mandarin. I can speak 1.5 languages. 0.5的英语和1的。
对。Okay. Keep going. I only have like 20 minutes tops, but I've got so many pages. Okay. 138. If a man wishes to separate from his wife who has borne him no children, he shall give her the amount of her purchase money and the dowry which he bought in the father's house, and let her go. 139. If there was no purchase price, he shall give her 1 mina of gold as a gift of release. 140. If he be freed man, he shall give her 1/3 of mina of gold. 141. If a man's wife who lives in his house wishes to leave it, plunges into debt, tries to ruin her house, neglects her husband, and is judicially convicted, if her husband offer her release, she may go on her way, and he gives her nothing as a gift of release. So if you just suck at being a person, you get nothing. If her husband does not wish to release her, and if he take another wife, she shall remain as a servant in the husband's house. 142. If a woman quarrel with her husband and say, "You are not congenial to me," the reasons for her prejudice must be presented. If she is guiltless and there is no fault on her part, but he leaves and neglects her, then no guilt attaches to this woman, and she shall take her dowry and go back to her father's house. Cool. 143. If she is not innocent, but leaves her husband and ruins her house, neglecting her husband, this woman shall be cast into the water. 144. If a man take a wife and this woman give her husband a maidservant, and she bear him children, but this man wishes to take on another wife, this shall not be permitted to him. He shall not take on a second wife. Okay. Okay. If 145. If a man take a wife and she bear him no children, and he intend to take another wife, if he take the second wife, he may bring her into the house, and the second wife shall not be allowed equality with his wife. Interesting. Okay, moving on. 146. 146. If a man take a wife, and she give this man a maidservant as a wife, and she bear him children, and then this maid assume equality with the wife, because she has borne him children, her master shall not sell her for money, but he may keep her as a slave. That's a big rip. Reckoning her among the maidservants. 147. If she have not borne him children, then her mistress may sell her. That's 148. If a man take a wife, and she be seized by disease, and then if then he desire to take a second wife, he shall not put away his wife who has been attacked by disease, but he shall keep her in the house which he has built and support her for so long as she lives. Hi. Okay. You guys are really quiet. I'm just talking away, reading all this stuff. You guys can make comments. Please distract me. I have 1, 2, 3, about 3 pages left. Okay, I've got like 10 minutes. Okay, 149. If this woman does not wish to remain in her husband's house, then he shall compensate her for the dowry that she brought with her from her father's house, and she may go. Cool. 150. If a man give his wife a field garden and a house and a deed therefor, if then after the death of her husband her sons raise no claim, then the mother may bequeath it all to one of her sons whom she prefers, and need leave nothing to his brothers. If a woman who 151. If a woman who lived in a man's house made an agreement with her husband, then no creditor can arrest her, and hath given a document therefor. If that man before he married that woman had a debt, the creditor cannot hold the woman for it. But if the woman before she entered the man's house had contracted a debt, her creditor cannot arrest her husband therefor. 152. If after the woman had entered the man's house both contracted a debt, both must pay the merchant. That's something that was like in the society, is that your debts are shared if you marry. So like if the husband has a whole bunch of debt, it becomes the wife, and vice versa. Fun fact about something that you probably don't care about. But 153. 153. If the wife of one man, on account of another man, has their mates, her husband and her other man's wife, murdered, both shall be impaled specifically for some reason. But 154. If a man be guilty of incest with his daughter, he shall be driven from the place, exiled. I can't believe that one's not punishable by death, but the other ones are. 155. If a man betroth a girl to his son, and his son have intercourse with her, but he the father afterwards defile her, and be surprised, then he shall be bound and cast into the water, so he'll be put to death. 156. I think a lot of these are kind of gross, so I'm going to skip over them just a bit. Because I think if you do bad things, you're going to be put to death. Just assume you'll die. So let's skip to 162. 162. If a man marry a woman, and she bears sons to him, if then this woman dies, then shall her father have no claim on her dowry. This belongs to her sons. 163. If a man marry a woman, and she bear him no sons, if then this woman die, if the purchase price which he paid into the house of his father-in-law is repaid to him, her husband shall have no claim upon the dowry of this woman. It belongs to the father's house. There's poor people here. What the heck are you doing? Okay, I'll keep going. Hi, how are you? Your nails painted? No, my nails are not painted. They're just normal. I don't actually own any nail polish. I didn't bring any to college, so maybe I can find some. But I always chip at it anyways. Focus. We have to read the code of Hammurabi. Okay. I'm slowly getting quieter, and I'm sorry for that, but I also am getting tired of reading hundreds of laws. So we'll keep going. Okay. Okay. What am I doing? 164. If his father-in-law do not pay back to him the amount of the purchase price, he may subtract the amount of the purchase price from a dowry and then pay the remaining to the father's house. I'm gonna skim some of these and then skip. Okay. I think I'm gonna take a break for now because this is a lot of laws to absorb. So, thank you for watching. I'm gonna go eat lunch, and I hope you learned something about the code of Hammurabi. Thanks for studying with me. See you guys later.